All right. Again, welcome. Happy World Ocean Week. And welcome to our Saving Monterey Bay Portscast. We are so excited for you to join us today. And I think it is just about time for us to get started. So welcome to the Monterey Bay area. We are super excited to be celebrating World Ocean Week with you all. First, I wanted to ask how everyone is doing. Let's do a show of thumbs. How is everyone feeling right now? Seeing a couple thumbs up coming in. Wonderful. I'll give you two thumbs up. I am super excited to be spending some time with you all today. Again, thank you for joining us in the beautiful Monterey Bay area. To introduce myself, my name is Isabella. I work for California State Parks. Here's our logo here. And I am joining you all from Asilomar State Beach. This is a beautiful California state park here in Pacific Grove, California. And I am joined by my friend and colleague, Ashley. Ashley, how's it going?
Good morning, Isabella. Happy World Ocean Week, everybody. My name is Ashley, and I am coming to you live just down the street from Isabella. It would take about 20 minutes or so to drive from Asilomar State Beach to Point Lobos. And I am super excited to be spending part of the morning with you all. And to get us started a little bit, I like to give you all the chance to look around. I am standing right above the Whalers Cove, which is on the northern edge of Point Lobos. Let me go ahead and flip the camera around here and give you all the chance to take a look around because it is a little bit of a foggy morning here, but the sun is trying to peek out. Looks a little less windy here than it is where Isabella is, but we can see the beautiful ocean right here, a little bit of blue sky, and go ahead and make some observations as I'm moving the camera around with things that you are noticing. And the waters here at Point Lobos are very special because they are part of what we call a marine protected area or an MPA. And just like we have state parks on land, we have these underwater parks that are there to protect not only the animals that live there, but their habitats as well. And so here at Point Lobos, because we have this marine protected area, there is no fishing allowed here, which makes home for lots of different types of animals. And we're going to be talking about a few of those throughout our time together. And as we're taking a look at the water, you're probably noticing all of this brown stuff on the surface of the water. That is going to be our giant kelp. And let me pull up a photo for us here to show you what it looks like if we were to put on our scuba gear, jump into the water here. It would look something like this. And just a truly magical place out in the ocean. And a couple of animals that we're going to be talking about today make their homes within this kelp forest. So I like to pass it back on over to Isabella over at Asilomar so we can take a look at what's going on over there.
So thank you, Ashley. It is looking beautiful at Point Lobos and so fun to get to take in some of the views of Point Lobos State Natural Reserve. So let's check out what is going on at Asilomar State Beach. I'm also going to flip my camera for you all. You can go ahead and make some observations as well. What are you noticing? What are you seeing at Asilomar State Beach? You can turn to a partner and share some of these observations. Our Q&A is open, so you can also type into our chat some of your observations. Wonderful. I'm seeing some comments about rocks. Definitely, we have a very rocky shoreline here. Might be a little different than what you normally are imagining if you're thinking of the beach. Noticing the tide pools. Yeah, we have some tide pools forming in the rocks. If you're noticing the ocean water that's kind of stuck and trapped in the rocks, creating this tide pool habitat. You're noticing water, waves, some ocean currents. Wonderful. Thank you all for sharing those great observations. And this is actually a lot of granite rock making up these uh, tide pools and rocky areas. Now, Asilomar State Beach is, as Ashley mentioned, it's just down the street from Point Lobos. And these two California state parks that we're visiting you from are both in the Monterey Bay area. So this is where we are in California. If you take a look at that black arrow, that is pointing to our location. So if you're familiar with the Monterey Bay Aquarium or Cannery Row, or even Pebble Beach, we're just down the street from some of those fun places to visit in the area. And just to zoom in even more, I am joining you all from Asilomar, which is right here, kind of on the Monterey Peninsula. And Ashley is down here. She's more in the Carmel area in Point Lobos. And this is a very special part of California. Both of our California state parks are in the Monterey Bay, which is a really diverse and beautiful part of our state. And during our Portscast today, we are going to be talking about 3 ocean animals that live here in the Monterey Bay that have been protected and conserved. They were hunted in the past and now they are protected. So we're going to be talking about some conservation stories of an abalone, a sea otter, and a whale. This will be an interactive webinar, so we will have some more time for you all to answer questions. We have our reactions and our Q&A open, and we will have time for questions at the end of our program. So one of the things that we are going to be talking about, and a word that we'll be mentioning, is the word endangered. If you have heard of the word endangered, can you put a hand on your head? Okay, I'm seeing some thumbs ups and some hearts that are coming through. Wonderful. Yeah, okay. So you might have heard of this word endangered before, and that means that it is something that has happened to a living thing. Maybe it could be an animal or a plant where their population has kind of decreased, it has gone down. There's not a lot of them left in the wild. And a lot of the animals we're going to be talking about today have become endangered. But I first wanted to ask you all, what are some of the ways that maybe we could have been impacting these animals, especially ocean animals? How could they have become endangered? What are some of the ways that we use the ocean that could have maybe been impacting these animals? Can go ahead and type into our Q&A, or again, you can turn to a partner and share. Hey. I'm seeing quite a few comments about trash and pollution. That is so true. That is definitely something that can threaten and make animals endangered. Also, fishing and overhunting. Poaching. Oh, and oil spills too. Yeah, awesome. Thank you all for sharing. So our ocean animals, they have been impacted by people a lot. We are really connected to the ocean. That is what our World Ocean Week celebration is all about. And for thousands and thousands of years, people have relied on the ocean. We've used it as a food source for um, our seafood. It's even a source of oxygen. About every other breath that we take is from the ocean, from animals in the ocean that produce oxygen, or plants as well, types of phytoplankton. But we've also done a lot of things that could harm the ocean, like putting our trash into it, or oil spills, or also overhunting some of the animals that are in the ocean. But this hasn't always been the case. I'll pass it over to Ashley to talk about some of the other ways that sometimes we have impacted, or animals just have been impacted by things going on our planet.
Thanks, Isabella. So, as we were just talking about, some of these animals can be endangered, and sometimes we can protect those animals, have their numbers start to rebound, start to increase again, which is what we're going to be focusing on today. But sometimes, unfortunately, some of these animals can become extinct. What does the word extinct mean? Go ahead and turn to somebody sitting next to you, or if you have a piece of paper handy, you can jot down a few notes. But what does the word extinct mean? So, when we think of the word extinct, it means that there are no longer any more of something. And sometimes extinctions can be natural. In the case of a couple of things in this photo that I'm about to pull up. Let's see. Here we go. So, sometimes extinctions can be caused by ice ages, like the photo on the left. And then even extinctions can happen, like in the case of the dinosaurs, by asteroid strikes. But we can, by protecting these animals, we can help make sure that these animals don't, in fact, go extinct. So I'm going to turn it over to Isabella to talk about our first success story animal.
Thank you, Ashley. So let's turn our focus to an animal that is found actually in part of the habitat behind me, and also in that kelp forest Ashley was showing you. This is what this animal looks like. This is a model of this animal. It is not the real life thing. Any guesses for what we're seeing right now? What type of animal is this? Hey, yes, this is a type of sea snail. Yeah, this is the abalone. They are a type of very big sea snail. As you can see, this is actually about the size of my head, maybe just a little smaller than my head. And these abalone are a type of sea snail. Again, they like to live in rocky habitats. Sometimes they can also be found in our kelp forest. I'll pull up a photo of an abalone in the wild. Here we go. So abalone have a really strong foot that they use to grab onto surfaces like rocks. So one of their main survival strategies is that they like to stick onto surfaces really hard so that they don't get pushed around by waves. This also makes it hard for predators, whether it's animals like sea otters or even people, to get them, because they can be really strong and hold on with their foot. You might also notice that they have this beautiful shell. Their shell covers their body. It's another way that they can defend themselves from predators. And take a look at the inside of the shell. So this is an empty abalone shell. You might notice these beautiful colors. The abalone shell has some really beautiful colors inside. And this kind of substance, this really pretty kind of iridescent and colorful substance is called nacre. It's spelled Nacre. It's also known as mother of pearl. And you can think of this as like almost like a sunscreen or a bug spray. More like a bug spray, actually, that these abalone use. So they coat themselves in this nacre, this protective substance, because it actually helps to keep dirt and even parasites away from their body. So it's like another way to protect themselves. You can also notice the holes that are in the shell. Does anyone know why these holes might be there? How do they help out the abalone? Yeah, it is a way for them to be able to get oxygen. Yeah, they can breathe. So that, yeah, they can breathe through these holes. Um, it's also a way for them to actually reproduce. They can send their eggs into the water, and they usually do that at the same time as other abalone. Things to go in and out. I love that. Yes. Wonderful. So our abalone, the word abalone actually comes from the word alune. This is a word from the Rumsen Ohlone people, the indigenous tribes, one of the indigenous tribes here in Monterey. They call abalone alune. And when the Spanish were here, they adopted that word into the word we now know, which is abalone. So abalone have been and continue to be very important for people. They are a source of food. They're a very popular seafood. And for the Remsen Ohlone and other indigenous tribes in California, they are very culturally important. They are used in jewelry and regalia. They also could be used even as shovels. So there was a lot of different uses, and of course, as seafood. But at a certain point in history, these abalone started facing some intense pressures, some of that overfishing and overhunting that you all were mentioning. So I'm going to pass it over to Ashley to talk more about this.
Thank you, Isabella, for introducing us to the wonderful life of an abalone. And here at Point Lobos, there were a couple of different groups of people that were also harvesting the abalone. So in addition to indigenous populations using this abalone, we also had Chinese utilizing the abalone, and they arrived to this area in about the 1850s and actually set up what is believed to be the first Chinese fishing settlement in California within the Monterey Bay area. And one of these fishing communities was set up here at Point Lobos. And the Chinese really understood the importance of balancing. And so they would be shifting what they were harvesting between different times of the year. And so they would rotate between abalone, squid, and even sea urchins. And as they arrived to this area, they also set up a cabin. And that cabin is actually still standing today. If I flip the camera around here and we take a look across the street here, this has turned into what is now the Whalers Cabin Museum. And then once, and it's a very popular spot for people to come and learn about the different human uses of Point Lobos. As you can see, a couple of people walking by. And then if we continue on a little bit later in time to the 1890s, Japanese arrived to this area. And it really started off the the increase in the harvesting of these abalone by a Japanese marine biologist. And his name, let me check my notes to make sure that I get it right. His name was Genosuke Kodoni, and he was a marine biologist. So somebody studying the life out in the ocean. And he arrived to this area, started noticing the wide abundance of these abalone, and started harvesting them. And they would basically free dive into the water and harvest these abalone that were found in shallow waters. But what do you think would happen to the abalone in the shallow water if you took a lot of them away, if you were harvesting a lot of them? Probably at some point you would run out of abalone in the shallow waters. But you might want to continue being able to find them, and so you'll need to turn to deeper waters. And so, in order to do that, the Japanese designed one of the first methods of scuba diving, where they would go out into the water on these small wooden boats and have somebody on the boat that basically would push air through a tube to or a hose down to divers underwater that were trying to harvest these abalone. And as they were pulling out these abalone, they would put these abalone on wooden racks to dry. And they actually set that up. If I flip the camera back around and spin us around, so we could take a look back on towards the other side of the cove here, right on this point right here, Full Shoot Point, they would set up these wooden drying racks with all these abalone. Let me go ahead, pull up a photo real quick here to show you what that might have looked like. Because there were quite a few, there were fewer trees back then as well. And so if we take a look at this photo, all of these wooden racks are filled with abalone. And if we take a look in the background of this photo, you can see that there's this building. And that is actually a cannery. And so the abalone that were being harvested were being brought to this cannery to be canned and sent off to different places. And it was so successful at one point in time that about 75% of abalone that was being sent around California came from this area. And so, as this intense harvesting continued to take place, the number of abalone continued to decrease to the point where today the fishery for them still remains closed. And it's anticipated that it will remain closed at least until next year, if not longer. But thanks to having these marine protected areas, we can help protect these abalone to ensure that their population can make a recovery. And there is another animal that lives in the same area in the kelp forest as our abalone that I'm going to pass it back over to Isabella to introduce us to our next animal.
Wonderful. Thanks, Ashley. I even mentioned this animal very briefly. This is a predator of our abalone. So the second animal that we wanted to highlight today is our friend, the southern sea otter. Now, these sea otters also have a conservation story, but I wanted to talk first about just some of their lifestyles. So sea otters, they are literally the furriest animal in the world. They have this super thick furry coat. And instead of relying on blubber, the layer of fat that keeps animals like seals, dolphins, or whales warm, they just have this furry coat. They can have up to 1 million hairs per square inch. Compared that to maybe a husky, one of those really fluffy species of dogs, they can have 10,000 hairs on an inch of their body. Sea otters can have up to 1 million. One other cool thing about sea otters is that they also have a huge appetite. So sea otters have to eat about 25% of their body weight every day to stay alive. And to put this into perspective, I would like you all to think about how many hamburgers you could eat in one day. How many hamburgers, and you could swap this out with a veggie burger if you're vegetarian. But I'd like you to put that number up on your fingers. How many hamburgers can you eat in one day of your life? All right, I'm seeing, looks like a big range of answers, anywhere from 1 to 3 to 6, or even someone is saying 50 hamburgers. Very impressive. There are definitely some big eaters here in our sportscast today. All right, I'm seeing 3 and 5 as well. Now let's imagine that our sea otter friend weighs 100 pounds. This 100-pound sea otter would have to eat 100 hamburgers in a day. So 100 seafood hamburgers for our sea otter. Much bigger and much more than the average person could eat if we were eating the equivalent of the hamburgers for the sea otter. Now, sea otters like to eat a range of different animals. They can eat quite a few animals, including crabs, octopus, worms, crabs. I saw a fun fact in the comments about that they have a favorite rock. Sea otters will have a rock that they store in actually the skin of their armpit that they will use to break open the shells of animals. So they can eat abalone as well. And they also can eat some purple sea urchins. I like to think of these purple sea urchins as like the porcupines of the ocean. They're really spiky. I'll circle one for you all here. They're very spiky. They're like a beautiful purple color. And purple sea urchins, as well as abalone, they love to eat the kelp. So they are grazers and herbivores. They love to munch on the kelp. But there have actually been some times in history when sea otters were hunted. So if you remember, sea otters have this super thick and furry coat. And beginning in the 1700s, there were actually Russian fur trappers that started to come to the coast of California, and actually Oregon and Washington as well. And they were hunting sea otters so that they could make their coats, their furry coats, into clothing for people. So this meant that there were thousands and thousands of sea otters being hunted and removed from the kelp forests, their home. So what do you think happened to the kelp forest without these sea otters around? It meant that there was none of these predators for the purple sea urchins or abalone. Oh, I'm seeing a great answer about they were overpopulating. The kelp might die or be damaged. Yeah, there would be too many urchins and not enough kelp. Exactly. Yeah, you all got it. This is exactly what happened to the kelp forest. So when these sea otters started being hunted, there was no animal to control the purple sea urchins and the abalone with their big appetite. So that meant that these purple sea urchins, especially, they really took over. Their population got really big and they started eating all of the kelp until there was none left. And that meant there was also not this kelp forest habitat for all the other animals that needed it. So these sea otters, they play a really important role in keeping our kelp forests healthy and balanced because they're eating so many animals in it. Our picture on our left-hand side, that is a healthy kelp forest, probably some sea otters around. Our picture on our right-hand side, that is a sea urchin barren, which is basically what you all were describing. It's you can see there's lots and lots of sea urchins around and not a lot of kelp that's growing. They've kind of taken over. All right. Now, as I mentioned, these sea otters, they were hunted for their coats, and they were actually almost hunted to extinction. So they were hunted to the point where people actually thought they had gone extinct because they couldn't find any otters in the coast of California. But there was actually a small population that was discovered in the 1960s, and they were living in Big Sur, which is about 1 hour south of here. And Big Sur, it's a very remote place. It's pretty hard to get to. So that meant that these sea otters had actually escaped the hunters. They had not been found by the hunters, so they were able to live there peacefully. And sea otters started becoming more and more protected. There was a law called the Marine Mammal Protection Act that was passed, and that made it illegal for anyone to hunt or even disturb or harass marine mammals like sea otters, other types of seals, whales, and dolphins. So with that law, the sea in place, sea otters slowly started returning to the Monterey Bay, and their population started growing because they were protected. So those 50 sea otters, they are the ancestors of the now 3,000 sea otters that are living in California. So the sea otters now live from Santa Cruz all the way down to Santa Barbara. And they're also helped by the marine protected areas. Some of the first places that sea otters were found in the Monterey Bay were actually in some of the marine protected areas just nearby Asilomar State Beach. They could find a lot of sources of food, like those abalone and clams and crabs, because they didn't have to compete for with people. These are these no fishing areas or no collecting areas. So there's plenty of food for them to find here. So we are super lucky to have these sea otters. They are still endangered. There's a lot of work, especially from the Monterey Bay Aquarium and other groups, still helping to increase our sea otter populations. But because they are protected now, we get to see a lot of them here where they should be in our Monterey Bay. So I'm going to pass it over to Ashley to talk about another type of marine mammal that was once hunted and is now protected.
Thank you so much, Isabella. And thanks to those protections, we also are able to see lots of otters here at Point Lobos. This time of year, we're also seeing quite a few mom and pups hanging around. And so it's really exciting to be able to see these otters today. So we started off with the smaller animal, our abalone, got a little bit larger with our sea otter. Now we're going to go to one of the largest kinds of animals found in the ocean. And if you were paying attention towards the beginning, you probably know what our last animal is going to be. It is this one right here, our gray whale. And there has been a history of whaling, people hunting these whales here at Point Lobos. And so I like to pull up a photo for us here. Let's see if I can find it. Here we go. And I like you to make some observations. What do you notice in this photo? You could turn to the person sitting next to you and share or jot down something in the Q&A, but what do you notice? So in this photo, probably seeing quite a few boats, fewer trees, even a large whale right along the shore, quite a few people hanging out here. And this painting, I think it's actually a painting, is where whaling took place here at Point Lobos. And that is actually in what is today the parking lot. So let me go ahead, flip the camera back around, spin us back around here. And so what we were just looking at would be this area right over here. Again, fewer trees, And there would be a group of about 15 to 20 people on a crew that would be hunting these whales. And these people were mostly Portuguese who came to this area in about the 1860s or so, with the intention of whale hunting. And so there was a person who had the very important job of helping to spot these whales. And so they would be standing on top of one of the highest points, being a lookout for any whale spouts, any signs that whales were in the area. And then they would relay that message to folks that would go out in smaller boats to try to capture these whales. Once these whales were found, they would bring them back into that little ramp and start cutting off strips of blubber, or that really thick layer of fat that is what the whales use to keep warm. And once they got that fat off the whales, they would actually melt it down into an oil. And that oil was used in a variety of ways, and it was used to help run lanterns. And this lasted about 10-ish years or so. And when the creation of kerosene happened, then the demand for whales really decreased. And humans were able to make that shift from the whale oil to kerosene. And now we're trying to make a shift from fossil fuels to more renewable energy. And so this is just an example of we made a shift one time, we can make that shift again. And as we continue thinking about how the three animals that we've talked about today, we also want to be able to continue these protections into the future. So I'm going to pass it back over to Isabella for some of the ways that we can continue these protections.
Awesome. Thanks, Ashley. That was so cool to learn about how whales have become protected as well. And they are also protected by our Marine Mammal Protection Act. So that's a really important law that is keeping all of our marine mammals safe and healthy when they are in the ocean. Now, I wanted to ask you all, when you're visiting maybe a California state park or a marine protected area, any open natural space, what are some of the ways that you think you could help out the animals that are living there? How can you help out animals that might be endangered, living in the ocean, or living on land? Wonderful. I'm seeing lots of ideas about beach cleanups, picking up our trash, and making sure that others are picking up their trash as well. Yeah, you can definitely make sure your trash ends up in a trash can or recycling bin when you're visiting a park or the beach. And you can also join some cleanups, whether they're at a beach or maybe along a river or a creek. That's an important way to make sure we can protect our environment. I also love that I was seeing some ideas about giving our wildlife a respectful distance, making sure that we can observe them and from a distance so that they don't get too afraid if we're going up to them or chasing them, because that can be pretty scary for some of the animals here. I'm seeing some also great ideas about leaving no trace. So as it kind of goes along with making sure that we are not leaving any trash, but it also means that we can keep all of the natural things, whether it's animals here or even flowers or rocks or shells. We can all keep them here because they're also part of the environment here. There's at Asilomar, we have lots of hermit crabs that are depending on the shells. So even if we keep the shells here, that can help them out. One thing I always like to tell people is that our individual actions, a lot of the cool things that you all were mentioning, whether that's picking up trash or joining a cleanup or keeping the animals safe by not getting too close to them. Our individual actions are contagious. They rub off on people. So even if it seems like a small thing, like picking up trash, that is setting a good example for people, whether it's just other visitors at a park or our friends and family. So know that you are making a difference, even if you're doing a small thing like picking up your trash. One of the cool facts that I know is that an indicator that someone has a solar panel on their house, one of our renewable energy sources, is that someone within their neighborhood, a mile of them, also has solar panels. So humans will see what other humans are doing and follow those examples. So I'm happy to see that you all are good stewards and protectors of our open spaces, making sure our endangered species are protected. This is how we move forward and keep these animals and our nature safe. So we want to thank you for joining us today at Asilomar State Beach and at Point Lobos and learning about our abalone, our sea otters, and our whales and how these animals were hunted in the past and are now protected by laws and protected by some of our actions when we're visiting their homes. I did want to open it up for some questions. You can go ahead and type into our Q&A. One question that I had already seen was about the purple sea urchins, asking if they are deadly for humans. Luckily, sea urchins are not deadly for us, but it will not be very comfortable if you step on one because they are spiky. So we recommend if you're visiting some tide pools that you wear closed-toed shoes so that you don't step on any animals and also so you don't trip on some of our rocks here. I had seen a question earlier also about what is the most important part of our job, which is a great question. I would say for my job, and I'll pass it over to Ashley in a moment, but getting to connect students like you with nature is really important and so cool to do because once we know about something, that means we can care about that environment. Once we know cool animals and some history of it, that means we can care more about it. So helping people care and just be passionate about our beautiful ocean is really cool to do. I'll pass it over to Ashley if you have anything to add.
Thanks, Isabella. And I think that's also the most important part of my job and also my most favorite part of the job is being able to share incredible places with not only students like all of you, like we are this morning, but also with visitors to our parks. And there are 280 state parks throughout California. So I encourage you to find a state park near you. Try to go visit, talk to people in these fancy uniforms, pick up a few interesting facts, and then bring what you are learning back home to share with your friends, with your families, and help spread the word for how we can protect these natural spaces, especially things related to the ocean. I spend a lot of my time both on top of the water as well as underneath the water as a scuba diver. And so being able to share interesting facts and spreading the word can help us protect our ocean because no matter where we live, we are all connected to the ocean. So we thank you in advance for helping all of us work together to continue these protections. Let's see if there are any other questions. Isabella, did you see any other ones?
Yeah, I've seen a couple questions about how many species are in the Monterey Bay, which is an excellent question because we have thousands of species here, hundreds of different types of fish, different invertebrates, animals like our sea urchins or abalone. We have lots of hundreds of birds. And one cool thing about the Monterey Bay is scientists do not know how many species are here because they are still discovering them. This is an amazing place to do research and learn. And we have scientists that are still discovering new species, especially in our deep sea habitat in the Monterey Bay underwater canyon or the submarine canyon. So we don't have an exact answer for you because people are still learning about all the species that are here.
There was another question about, do people still hunt
Mm.
whales? And in the United States, no, because of the Marine Mammal Protection Act. So just like our otters are protected by this law, so are our whales, dolphins, seals, sea lions, all of our marine mammals. But in other countries, some whaling does still happen today.
Yeah. So a lot of our whales that are here in the Monterey Bay are gray whales and humpback whales. These are about a mid-sized whale. I saw a good question about how big can they get. Humpback whales and gray whales can be around 45 feet long, which is about the size of a school bus. The Monterey Bay also does get visits from the blue whale, which is the biggest animal on Earth. That can be over 100 feet long. So they can be twice the size of our humpback and gray whales. Humpbacks and grays are not endangered, and neither are seals or sea lions, or at least the common ones we see here in the Monterey Bay. So they have really been helped by some of the laws that were passed because seals were also hunted in the past as well.
I think we'll end with one final question about, what is your favorite animal in the Monterey Bay, Isabella?
That is such a good question and always such a hard question because there are so many amazing species here. I would have to say that I love seeing dolphins. Those have been a favorite animal of mine since I was a kid. And we have a lot of different dolphin species here, including bottlenose dolphin and even orcas or killer whales. The biggest type of dolphin, they also are here in the Monterey Bay. What about you, Ashley?
I think I'm partial to the orca. I have yet to see one out in the wild, but I think they are just incredible creatures, super majestic, and so I'm gonna have to go with an orca.
Wonderful. Well, thank you all for those questions. I apologize we didn't get around to all of them, but it is time for us to say goodbye. So, again, thank you for joining us for our Portscast today for saving Monterey Bay. And I hope you feel inspired about some of the conservation success stories, how we have protected quite a few different types of animals here in the Monterey Bay and in California. So thank you for joining us. Have a great rest of your World Ocean Week and a great rest of your week in general. And we will see you next time. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye. Thanks.